Good afternoon, everybody. Delighted to be here as always. So my name is Elaine Tyler. I'm the CEO and founder of Venatrix. Perhaps quite fittingly for today's panel, Venatrix actually means the huntress in Latin. So there you go. We are a specialist SDR recruitment organization that places SDRs into some of the most exciting and fastest growing SaaS businesses in London. In terms of my journey into sales, so I grew up with my role model as my father, who ran his own business. And ultimately, from a very young age, I was on the front line of that business, helping him with his jewelry stall. And then from there, I went into casual customer facing roles. So I worked in a clothes shop where I actually worked on commission for selling t shirts that said, "This bitch bites." I used to get 10% commission for selling each one and £2.50 an hour. But ultimately, that gave me the taste for the cut and thrust of sales, closing deals, and working with people ultimately. So from there, then I left my hometown, stopped selling t-shirts, went to university, studied business management, which again kind of gave me a little bit more about the fundamentals of business. And then when I graduated, I decided that I wanted to look for a career that played to my strengths of dealing with people, and work in a dynamic environment. So I went to a recruitment company that placed salespeople, and that recruitment company asked me to join them. So I started my career there working in recruitment, which is very much a sales position. I spent 7 years working there, so joined as a very junior salesperson, i.e., a resourcer. And over the 7 years that I was there, I became a director of that business. Subsequently, I then founded my own company, which has now been around for 6.5 years. And as I've mentioned, obviously that's Venatrix. And ultimately, we also now place salespeople. So I think when it comes to the world of sales, I'm firmly in it, placing people and obviously operating as a salesperson every day. And it's something that I really enjoy, keeps me motivated, keeps me challenged and tested daily. And I can't imagine doing anything else. So the reason why I'm here today is because obviously very passionate about women in sales. I think that as a organization that helps the companies that we work with hire people into their teams, we have a very direct role on women in sales, how to attract women in sales, how to support women in sales. Companies seek our advice and guidance. So wanted to come along, share what it is that I've potentially learned, and definitely learn from the other ladies on the panel. So that's me.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Great introduction, great way to start. Loretta?
Hi, afternoon, everyone. So my name is Loretta Jeremiah, and as James mentioned, I am a regional manager at Varicent. So I've spent, I think, the last 8 to 10 years of my career in sales. So I did my degree in finance and economics and kind of expected to land somewhere in a finance role. That's the background of my parents and kind of what I just figured would happen because I was good with numbers. But then during my degree, I did a placement year at a large tech company. And I spent time in the financial services element of that within the sales team. And the dynamic of the team, the roles that they had, the variety they had within their day was something that I said, for my future, that's exactly what I want. So I said, any role that I go into in the future, the one thing that was important to me is that every single day was not the same. And I have to say that's exactly what I've been able to achieve. So in the last week, I've been in an office, worked from home, had meetings in Budapest, meetings in Amsterdam. I'm all over the place. So for me, journey-wise, it's been in sales from the very beginning. I love to be on the front lane, as Elaine said. I love the hunt, I love the win, and that is what I push for and work through. So I've worked in large tech companies. I'm now working in a slightly smaller tech company, which I do really, really enjoy. And why join this event for me? So as James mentioned, it was actually our general manager that was kind of pushing for an event like this. And he is a really big advocate for women in sales. And so us leaving our larger organization, one thing I said to him was, I've been the only woman in the team for the past couple of years. I will not have it anymore. If you don't hire some women and get some really excellent talent in this team, then you may not have me around. And he took it extremely literally. I think we got to a point where we were 50-50. It was exactly half men, half women, exceptional salespeople, BDRs, customer success managers. And it just shows that, even if for us naturally. We don't think, it's a role that's made for us, or, it seems really male dominated. There is a space for us. And that's exactly why I'm here today, to speak to more people that have an interest, but are not sure of how they get there, and hopefully give you some inspiration.
Amazing. Thank you for that introduction, Loretta. Francis?
Hi, good morning to also everyone in the States. I see some people popped in from Austin and Vermont. But yes, Francis Arville, Senior Sales Manager here at G2 Software B2B Review Platform. I lead the mid-market and senior account executives on the EMEA side here in our London office. How I got into sales initially was pretty much an accident. I didn't know what I was going to study. I didn't know what I really wanted to do. I studied psychology, super vague in college. And then once college was over, didn't really know where to start. So I really just applied anywhere and everywhere, a lot of marketing roles, a lot of sales roles. And as I was figuring out what I wanted to do, I was always simultaneously waiting tables, working retail. And I realized very quickly the thing that always got me super high was every time I was closing the most number of dollars on a restaurant floor, or if I could sell the most whiskey of anybody else. That was always the thing that got me super excited. And I realized very quickly, okay, so there's this thing called tech in the Chicago area. I guess I'll give that a try. Started my career in inside sales at this company, MSDS Online, which was environmental health and safety. And very quickly, I got very excited about seeing my name on a dashboard, competing head to head with people. I was there for almost 5 years. I was very loyal, very ride or die, but eventually I did want to expand what else B2B SaaS was, wanted to expand on the world of tech. And I did have international aspirations. So started looking around, and that's how I found G2. At the time, there was no London office or any international office at the time. But the leaders at the time definitely sold me on this idea of having a London office, and my naivete believed them. But I'm so glad I did, because 5 years later, they have a full London office. We have about 80 employees now, which is super exciting. And for context, I never wanted to be a manager. I never wanted to lead the team. I was very lone wolf, seeing my name on a dashboard. But then with COVID and everything, at the time, the VP of sales, Enrique, had me rise to the occasion, threw me this idea that, hey, you might not make money like you're used to with COVID. We don't know what this is, but maybe you can learn a new skill set. Maybe you can help and scale a business a different way. Bought into that. Obviously, COVID was very nice to all of tech. And not only did the team smash their number, but then I also realized that I really love helping, supporting people, helping other individuals level up their career, and learning more about myself along the way. It's been super amazing here, and just seeing all the growth and potential has been pretty awesome. And then part of the reason that I wanted to join today is 10 years ago in sales, I was super happy as an individual contributor. I didn't care if I was competing with men, women, if someone was white, black, polka dotted, orange, yellow. I just really wanted to win. But then now on this side of the table, where I'm trying to build a team and realizing that my team does not look like the world, I definitely want to do my little part in making sure that my team and every other team that I work with moving forward looks very much like the world.
Good. That's a great point to make. And I think we've already had some observations. It's great to see the conversation in the chat, actually. Where have you women all been in my other events? Because it's super active and it's great to see. But we've got a great diversity of thought here. And I think we can challenge some of the stereotypes that are typically associated with sales just by the representation of these calls that we've got today. I'd love to start with a kind of question around challenges that you faced as individual, specifically as a woman in sales, and how you've overcome that on your journey. So Elaine, do you want to pick that one up?
Yes, definitely. So I think that I have experienced a kind of self-imposed challenge from time to time as a woman in sales, and it's to do with men, but I don't think that men have done it to me. But I think, perhaps with some of the things that we're talking about with representation, it is an interesting point. So, um, as I have become more experienced and then obviously gone on to become a director of a company and then founded my own business, the result of that is that I've obviously attended multiple board meetings, meetings with senior people. And the fact of the matter is that the dominant gender in those meetings is often men. So I don't, I do see men as absolute allies, and every experience that I've had of working with men in my career has been super positive. Men have, helped me accelerate my career for definite. But I think that there is that interesting point of being the minority, whatever that might look like in the room, because, well, first of all, men in a boardroom may never have experienced that before, or fewer may have experienced it. And I think that sometimes that challenge can mean, are you understood in the same way? Are your views supported in the same way? Have people had the same experience as you? And that could even potentially produce maybe a nervousness to express your point of view, or something that you want to say that that other people might not have had the same experience as. So, a key point for me around that is really us building representation at senior levels in businesses across all industries, so that there isn't that minority dynamic of any kind in any room. So everybody feels comfortable that their voice could be heard and also understood.
Great point. Loretta?
So I'd say, I think some of the key challenges that I've faced. So early stages in my career, it was that, you have the slight imposter syndrome that I've just completely dismissed and moved away from, in that, do I feel like I belong in this space? Especially as Elaine was saying, there's no one else that looks like me in the room. And it's, I was standardly usually the youngest person, the only woman, and then the only woman of color. So it was always, you're the only person. Does your opinion matter? Does, what you have to say and what you think matter in a conversation, that there are people probably more senior and more experienced than you? And what I found is that my different viewpoint on the world is what was making a difference and what was making me more successful. I'd say a key thing for people starting out in their career, you always feel that you want to be really helpful and you want to try and do as much to impress your management and, do what you can for the team. But one thing I always kept taking on as the only woman in the team were things like, if we've got team building things, we've got more administrative things. That was not my role. That is not your role. If you're in sales, you have a focus. You've got a number to hit the same as everyone else. Don't feel that if you're pigeonholed into taking some specific roles within the team because you happen to be the only woman, and you may do it much better than anyone else because you have that, the skill and the experience, but don't feel like you have to. I think that's one thing I had to move away from. And I'd say the other thing that, growing into my career, I'm a regional manager now, and I cover, so from my perspective, I cover all of Northern Europe. So that's Central Eastern Europe to Benelux, to the Nordics, to DACH. So I travel a lot. As I mentioned, I've been in 2 cities in the past week. And again, you do face the, do I belong in some of these spaces? You're meeting a lot of different type of people. And in those settings, again, you are mainly meeting a similar demographic or, a single gender. And you just have to know that you are intelligent, you're there for a reason, and just be confident in yourself that you belong in that space.
I love that advocacy and insight into putting your best foot forward and representing yourself as a confident individual, no matter the room you're in. I think that's a great reminder to everyone on how you can stand out in your crowd. Francis?
So my response is very similar to that of Elaine's and Loretta's. I do suffer also, even to this day, a little bit of that imposter syndrome and wondering if I deserve a seat at the table. But then to Elaine's point, I don't think men did it to me. Well, I'm sure a lot of it is my own self and things that I need to personally work through. That said, I think one of the biggest challenges, which I didn't realize until probably much later in my career than I would have hoped, was also the kind of stark difference in pay, right? I think a lot of the guys that I was doing the same job as were just so used to always asking for, more money, more salary, all of these things. And they weren't necessarily doing much better or worse than myself, but they just had that confidence to constantly ask and expect that it was going to come to them. until, you're out and about, maybe at a bar with amongst what you thought were friends and coworkers. And then you realize, whoa, there's a massive, massive difference between where you're at and where they're at. So yeah, just really learning that transparency is super key and being able to be more open with those both men and women around you to understand like where you're at, and understand like what's fair, I think is super key. And while money is not everything, right, it does allow access to all the other wonderful things that men and women all want.
Interesting points. I think that's why there also needs to be more male allies to understand that there could be that differential, and actually needs to be supporting women and giving them a voice to speak up and making it easier for them in that environment. So important point. Going back to you, Francis. So research does suggest that women can outperform men in sales, which they absolutely can, of course. But what would you say are the attributes of women, or your own attributes, that have made you a high-performing salesperson and sales leader in your career?
So for me, my loyalty has been super huge. I've always been a very, I think I said at the beginning, ride or die person. And I think a lot of the women that helped me early on in my career, and then even a lot of the women today, have all had really good consistency in their jobs, even as mothers, right? Like you can't tap out really as being a mom. So that loyalty to one organization, one team, wanting to be super supportive of those around you and not tapping out early has really paved the way in how I want to build my own career and how I want to build my own teams. And then interestingly enough is a huge key characteristic that I also look forward in my own hiring. I want to know, right? Sales is tough. There's more low points than high points. So if you're willing to ride with me for the long haul, even better.
Great. Loretta?
I would say, and it's a really great question, I would say a lot of the skills that all salespeople need to have are pretty standard. There's personality types, but I'd say the women that I've worked with, I do find that their approach to dealing with new prospects and clients, there's just a slightly higher level of empathy. And so, as salespeople, you can go in and be, a bull in a china shop and go full force. And in some cases, it works really well. But in some cases, you do need to take a step back and just make kind of the deeper connections and build those relationships in a different kind of way. Customers and people in general don't like to be sold to. They want to be listened to, they want to be understood, and therefore they then, they have greater trust in terms of moving forward with, whether you're selling SaaS, whether you're selling, hardware, regardless of what it is, they want to be understood and they want to be able to trust the person that they're working with. And I think, from my approach, I've always found that I like to go with a more consultative approach, and bring that level of empathy in my personal life to ensure that any relationship I'm building, customer, whether they're very technical, whether it's a CIO, CTO, they're going to get the same level of empathy and, communication skills from me. So I'd say that's one of the key things.
Brilliant. Elaine?
So for me personally, I think that I've always been very conscientious in like my work that I've done. So wanted to deliver the best standard that I'm capable of. And that, desire for me has been stronger than the need to like win something or be competitive, like literally competing with myself to know that I've done the very best job of what it is that I could do. I also think personally my like problem solving skills and ideas generation are never kind of hitting that dead end and taking that as the solution, and always trying to come up with another way around things is something that I've done that's helped make me successful. Then from working with both men and women, I've definitely observed that in the earlier stages of somebody's career, I do think that women potentially have better planning skills. So a little bit more kind of thought into the immediate medium term future of how they're actually going to organize their time for the best results.
Great. I was wondering, have you got a question that you would like to ask Elaine?
Yes, for definite. So, what do you think companies could do to support women better in the workplace? Should we go with you, Loretta, first?
Yeah, happy to. And, there's women in the workplace and then women in sales because, I do find that there are more specific roles that you find women, gravitate towards. So I know for our team, we've got, a lot of women in HR, a lot of women in, some of the operations roles, and maybe not so much on the technical side or on the sales side. And I think it's events like this, number one, is like amazing for the exposure and understanding, what is out there, what are people doing. So I think things like this are really great. And organizations, I know Venatrix and G2 and Varicent are all connected with places like Sales Confidence that are allowing and pushing for events like this to give women that exposure that there is more out there for you. If you are interested and you feel you have the skills, get out and connect with people and just understand what it is and what it takes. But internally, I do feel like more of that promotion of the different types of roles. And rather than saying, okay, you need 7 years experience in this, and, these are the key things you need to do this role. Sometimes it is more about the personality and the want and the will to do it. I'd say if there are a lot of women in leadership roles, like people like Elaine and Francis are amazing. If there are people coming into the organization, partnering them with people like Elaine and Francis to speak with them to understand what their journey is, how they got there, in order to give them the motivation that they can achieve and move up the organization as they have.
Amazing. What do you think, Francis?
For me, at least, the little bit I do on my team and that I get excited about when I see it done well in other meetings is really advocating for one another, right? It's so easy for women to not say anything. I know I've been in so many meetings with 7 dudes and I didn't say a thing. And I think if I wasn't even in the room, I don't know if they would have even noticed. But it's been amazing when I watch people literally call out, "Hey, Loretta, what do you think?" Or, "Hey, Elaine, that one comment that you mentioned was super great for XYZ reason." Those are those little moments that people can really lift each other up. And it does either for women or even quiet guys, right? Allowing all of these people that sometimes don't necessarily have a voice to feel like they're being heard. And sometimes that little push and nudge is going to be super huge. And it's not necessarily this massive, massive thing that companies have to think about and plan on a large scale. Sometimes it's really just these little things of love, bringing each other up in small meetings.
Yeah, a lot of it's about like being aware, particularly as the three of us like mentioned straight off the bat that we've all felt that sense of imposter syndrome. So for everyone who's an audience on the call today, I wonder how many meetings they've been in where there's been somebody having that experience, and maybe that invitation to speak could have pushed them on to share their contribution, building their confidence and maybe adding something to the company too.
Yeah, I'd like to add just that your men might not necessarily be aware. Well, men suffer from imposter syndrome as well. But the point is, if we're not asked about encouraging women to have a voice, and we're not aware about the challenges that you're going through, it's harder for us to be an ally in that situation. So I do feel that, there is a responsibility to the woman to actually speak up and identify peers in the organization that they can build an ally and a trust network with, that can then support the career journey they want to take and help them navigate other challenging leaders, because not everyone's going to be so easy to work with in an organization, male or female, in fact. And so if you can find and identify allies that you can, converse with, have private conversations with, that can guide you on your journey, I think that's going to put you in a strong position to navigate your career internally.
And you don't need to be a leader to be somebody who is an advocate for women in sales. If there's people on this call today who they don't have those like forums or groups or identification within their companies, they could go about setting one up, and lead the initiative within your own business.
That's a great idea. So we've got time for one more question for this panel. Elaine, have you got a question you would like to ask?
Yeah. So if you could wave a magic wand, what would you want the workplace to look like in sales tomorrow? Don't know if you want to start this time, Francis.
It would look 50-50, right? Like, I'm not trying to get women ahead. I'm not trying to, make it so that women rule the world kind of thing. It would really look like the world. It would be colorful, and there would be men, and there would be women, and there would be of all ages, right? It's interesting on some of my interviews that I'm hearing about people being like, oh, I'm so excited about G2 because people are young. Or I'll have somebody be like, oh, I'm excited for G2 because, there's our CEOs around my age, or, whatever it might be. Like, ideally, it would just look like the world. That would be what my wish would be in terms of tech, the business, the company, this industry.
What about you, Loretta?
I'd say a similar point, but I think just more specific to that is having representation across all areas of the business. I think, like I said, it's often that women gravitate to one area rather than the other, and then it still looks like, okay, because there's loads of women here, there's loads of women in this organization, and therefore we're balanced. However, if they're all sitting in one or two areas of business, and then you've got sales, the very technical people, and like your services delivery, they're all very male dominated. It's still not having that representation of ideas and experiences across the organization. So I'd say I'm never in support of forcing a situation and just putting people in roles that they're not suited for. So I definitely think it's about finding the right candidates for the right role. But I do think every area of the business does need representation on both sides. And whether we can get to the point it's 50-50, that's amazing. I know, as I mentioned within our team, we did get to a point where it was equal men to women, and it was the first time I'd ever seen in my career. And all the other people I worked with said exactly the same thing. So it was really, really great. But yeah, I think it's about finding that variety, but also having the right person for the right job.
Absolutely. Great summary. Thank you for your questions, Elaine. The time has just flown by, so there's so much more content that we could be covering. What I'd like people to do is put their questions to these panelists in the comments. So put them into the comment area. And then what we can do is have the panelists answer while they're in the background in the chat. Honestly, I think there's a lot of enlightening talks here, and I really hope more men could hear some of the points that you're making. I think that's what I'm going to work harder at, is encouraging men to join a Women in Sales event, because it's not just for women. So that's something to work on. But thank you very much for all your initial points, and I really appreciate you joining today's panel.
Thank you,
you.
James.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.